The sun had just started its slow descent behind the rolling hills of the ranch. Its golden light spilled across the fields, turning the tall grass into rivers of gold that swayed gently with the evening breeze. The ranch was quiet, as it always was at this hour. The only sounds were the occasional lowing of cows, the distant call of a hawk, and the rhythmic clopping of hooves from the rancher making his evening rounds. He was a man used to solitude. Years of living on this land had taught him patience and resilience. His hands were rough and calloused from years of hard work, yet his movements were careful and deliberate, as if every action had a purpose. Tonight he was checking on the new calves born earlier that week. He moved slowly, leaning over to inspect a small brown calf that nuzzled its mother for warmth. Everything seemed calm, peaceful. But that calmness was about to break. From the edge of the dirt road that led to his ranch, a figure appeared. At first it was just a silhouette against the fading light, but soon the details became clear. A woman was walking cautiously toward him, her steps uneven, as if she had been walking for hours. She carried a small bundle in her arms, swaddled tightly with a thin blanket. Her hair was tangled, her clothes dusty, and there was a look in her eyes that told a story of fear, exhaustion, and desperation. The rancher stopped what he was doing and watched her approach. There was something different about her, something urgent in the way she moved. She didn't call out. She didn't wave. She just kept walking, head slightly bowed, as if the world behind her had become too dangerous to return to. As she came closer, he noticed the small child in her arms. The child stirred slightly, making a soft whimpering sound. The woman's pace faltered. She stopped a few feet away, looking around as if checking for danger before taking another step. Her eyes met the rancher's, and she murmured softly, almost to herself, "Careful, it hurts." The words hung in the air, fragile and almost fearful. The rancher's instincts kicked in. He knew from experience that when someone spoke like that, they were not just talking about physical pain, they carried emotional weight as well. He took a step forward, his voice calm and steady. "It'll be over quickly." The woman flinched slightly at his words but didn't step back. There was a hesitation in her movements, a deep wariness that told him she had learned to trust no one. Yet something in his tone seemed to reach her. She shifted the small bundle in her arms and took another careful step forward. The rancher set aside the small notebook he had been carrying to check the herd. He wiped his hands on his worn jeans and approached her slowly, giving her space but showing that he was willing to help. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle, careful not to startle her. I don't know," she whispered. Her voice trembled slightly and her eyes darted around as if expecting someone, or something, to appear from the shadows. I need help," the rancher nodded. He had seen people in difficult situations before, though few like this. He gestured toward the small barn nearby. "Come on, let's get you inside." "It's safe there." The woman glanced at the barn, then back at him. After a long pause, she nodded, her trust fragile but present. She moved slowly, her steps cautious as he walked beside her. The child in her arms stirred again, making a soft whimper. The rancher noticed the bruise forming on the child's cheek and the scratches on the woman's arm. It was clear they had been through something dangerous, something that left both physical and emotional marks. Inside the barn, the air was cool, filled with the faint smell of hay and animals. The rancher helped her sit on a wooden bench and carefully laid the child down on a soft blanket. He motioned toward the water bucket he had set aside for the animals and filled a cup for her. "Drink this," he said gently. She took it hesitantly, her hands shaking slightly, and sipped slowly. "Thank you," she murmured, almost inaudible. Her eyes, however, betrayed more than words could say. They were filled with relief and a small spark of hope. The rancher studied her carefully. She was clearly in pain, both from recent injuries and from something deeper that weighed on her spirit. He knew he had to act with patience. Any sudden move could make her pull back entirely. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small first aid kit he always kept nearby. "I'll take care of the cuts," he said calmly. "I know it hurts, but it'll be over quickly." She flinched at the words again, this time more noticeably. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the blanket around her child. I'm scared," she admitted, her voice breaking. The rancher nodded, understanding completely. Fear was natural. It didn't make her weak, it made her human. "I know," he replied softly. "You're safe here. I won't let anything happen to you or the child." He worked slowly, cleaning her cuts and dressing them carefully. Every motion was deliberate, careful not to cause unnecessary pain. The woman bit her lip and whispered again, "Careful, it hurts." Each time he repeated his reassurance, "It'll be over quickly." Gradually she relaxed just a little, as if the constant reassurance made her believe that maybe, just maybe, this stranger could be trusted. Hours passed as the sky outside turned from gold to pink to the deep purple of evening. The woman remained quiet but watched him work with a careful interest. The rancher spoke softly, telling small stories of life on the ranch, the animals, the seasons, the quiet beauty of the land. Slowly she listened. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. The child finally settled, lulled by the calm atmosphere and the warmth of the barn. By the time the moon rose high in the sky, casting silver light through the gaps in the barn walls, the woman had stopped murmuring her warnings. The rancher had earned a small measure of her trust. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel safe. The rancher, too, felt a quiet satisfaction. He had spent his life tending to animals and land. But tonight, helping another human being brought a sense of purpose that went deeper than anything he had known before. Outside, the world was silent. Inside the barn, two lives that had been strangers only hours before were beginning to intertwine through patience, courage, and care. And though neither could have known it yet, this night would mark the beginning of a journey neither of them would ever forget. The night passed quietly on the ranch. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, rustling the leaves softly. Inside the barn, the woman slept fitfully on the bench, her child curled up beside her. The rancher stayed nearby, alert even in the stillness, listening to the small sounds of the night. Years of living alone had taught him to notice the smallest changes, the faintest signs of trouble. Tonight he was on guard not for himself but for these two strangers who had stumbled into his life. By morning, the first light of day spilled over the hills, bathing the ranch in a soft, golden glow. Birds chirped from the treetops, and the distant lowing of cows marked the start of a new day. The woman stirred, opening her eyes slowly. She looked tired but relieved, as if surviving the night had been a small victory. She glanced around the barn, her gaze finally settling on the rancher who was leaning against a post, watching her with a calm, steady expression. "Good morning," he said softly. "You rested okay?" She nodded, though a hint of uncertainty remained in her eyes. "I think so," she whispered. Her voice was still shaky, but there was a faint warmth in it. She reached for the child, brushing back tangled hair, and smiled faintly as he stirred awake. For the first time since arriving at the ranch, she allowed herself a small sense of normalcy. Breakfast was simple. The rancher brought out some bread, eggs, and fresh milk. He handed a small plate to the woman and another to the child. At first she hesitated, unsure if she could trust even this simple act of kindness, but hunger and instinct overcame her fear. She accepted the food, her hands shaking slightly. "Thank you," she said quietly, looking down at the plate. "You don't have to thank me," the rancher replied. "Just eat. You'll need your strength." As they ate, the rancher watched her carefully. He could see the tension in her shoulders slowly easing. Each bite seemed to bring a little more courage, a little more willingness to trust. After breakfast, he suggested they step outside. The morning air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scent of hay, soil, and wildflowers. The rancher showed her the small garden near the barn, the chicken coop, and the pond where the animals drank. "It's beautiful here," she murmured, her eyes taking in the wide-open fields and the gentle hills beyond. "It feels safe." "That's what I try to keep it," he replied with a faint smile. "It's a place where people and animals can heal. You'll find it's peaceful if you give it a chance." She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. There was a pause, then she said softly, "I don't know how to thank you for last night." The rancher shook his head. "No thanks are needed. Sometimes people just need help. That's all. You're safe here. And that's enough." Over the next few hours, he began to tend to her injuries more thoroughly. The bruises on her arms and shoulders were worse than he first realized, and the scratches on her legs needed careful cleaning. Each time he worked, she murmured, "Careful. It hurts," flinching slightly at the touch, but he remained patient, explaining each step before doing anything, and repeating, "It'll be over quickly." Slowly, she began to trust his hands, realizing that his calmness and care meant he would not cause her unnecessary pain. While he worked, she began to speak in small fragments about her journey, She spoke of the long roads she had traveled, of a town that had grown unsafe, and of people she had trusted who had betrayed her. Her voice trembled, but she spoke more openly as he listened without judgment. The rancher never pressed for details he didn't need to know. He only offered a safe space for her words. The child, meanwhile, began to explore the barn quietly, picking up small wooden toys the rancher had built for his own children long ago. The little boy laughed softly when a chicken wandered by, pecking at the ground. His laughter was a small miracle to the woman who had spent days in fear. Watching him, she felt a flicker of hope that life could still hold small joys, even after so much fear and pain. By midday, the sun was high and warm. The rancher suggested she rest while he did the chores outside. She agreed, settling back on the bench with the child in her lap. As she watched him work, she felt a strange sense of gratitude. There was something steady and dependable about him. In a world that had been unpredictable and frightening, he was a solid presence she could rely on. During the afternoon, he brought her water and snacks, checking on her every so often. Each time she whispered her familiar warning, "Careful, it hurts." And each time he repeated, "It'll be over quickly," giving her reassurance through both words and actions. It became a quiet rhythm between them, a small bond forming through patience and gentle care. In those moments, the woman began to feel something she had not felt in a long time: trust. It was a fragile, delicate trust, but it existed. She started to realize that perhaps this rancher, this stranger who had opened his doors to them without hesitation, might be someone who could help her rebuild her life. As the day wore on, the rancher finished his chores and sat down beside her. The sun was beginning to set again, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. They sat in silence for a few moments, watching the colors reflect off the fields. The woman felt a quiet comfort she had not experienced in months. "Thank you for today," she said softly. "For everything." "You're welcome," he replied simply. "Just take it one step at a time. That's all any of us can do." The evening brought a cool breeze, and the rancher offered her a blanket to keep warm. She accepted it with a small smile, feeling the kindness of a stranger who had become a protector. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, she felt a sense of hope that had been absent for too long. She wasn't fully healed, and the road ahead was still uncertain, but she knew she was safe for the first time in many days. The rancher stayed nearby once again, watching over them. He knew this was only the beginning. Trust had to grow slowly, and healing would take time, but he also knew that some bonds born in moments of shared vulnerability could last a lifetime. And tonight, in the quiet of the ranch, a small bond had begun to form, one built on patience, care, and the simple promise that even in pain, someone could be trusted to help. The next morning arrived with a pale light stretching across the ranch. The air was cool and smelled of fresh grass and dew. The rancher was already outside feeding the animals when he heard a soft stir inside the barn. The woman and her child were awake, moving quietly, careful not to disturb the calm of the morning. She had slept better than the night before, though the bruises on her arms and the scratches on her legs reminded her that healing would take time. She looked at the rancher with cautious eyes, silently asking whether he was ready to help her further. He noticed her hesitation but offered a gentle smile. "We'll take it slow," he said, "step by step. Nothing will be rushed." She nodded, gripping the child's small hand tightly. I'm afraid," she admitted softly. Her voice was small but honest. The rancher nodded in understanding. Fear was natural, especially after everything she had endured. "I know," he said calmly, "but I'll be right here with you. You're not alone." He led her to a small table in the corner of the barn where he had set up a simple first aid station. Today, he planned to carefully clean the deeper cuts and treat the bruises more thoroughly. This was the part that would hurt, but it needed to be done for her to heal. The woman flinched at the sight of the supplies, murmuring, "Careful, it hurts." The rancher knelt in front of her, meeting her eyes. "It will be uncomfortable for a moment," he said, "but it'll be over quickly." His tone was calm and steady, the kind of tone that reassured without pressure. Slowly, she allowed him to begin. He started with her arm. He cleaned the scratches gently, explaining each step before doing anything. He watched her reactions carefully, pausing whenever she flinched or tensed. "I know it hurts," he said softly, "but it's the only way to make it better." She nodded, biting her lip, trusting him enough to stay still. The child watched silently, leaning against her mother. He seemed to sense the tension but also the calm determination of the rancher. There was a strange comfort in seeing someone gentle and patient caring for his mother. For a moment, the child forgot the hardships they had faced, distracted by the quiet calm of the barn and the kind hands tending to his mother. As he worked, the woman began to speak again, cautiously. I didn't know where to go, she said. Every town I tried, every road I took, it felt like danger was always behind me. Her voice trembled slightly. The rancher listened quietly, nodding. He did not interrupt or judge. He only offered a steady presence. You're safe here, he said after a moment. Nothing can touch you here. We'll take care of you. She let out a shaky breath, and for the first time in a long while, a small part of her relaxed. The trust she had begun to feel the day before was growing. It was fragile, but it was there. And with trust came a little courage. The courage to face the pain necessary for healing. After finishing her arm, he moved to her legs. The bruises were worse than he expected, and cleaning them would cause discomfort. The woman whispered, "Careful." "It hurts," again, her voice trembling. The rancher nodded, his own patience unwavering. "I'll be gentle," he said. "It'll be over quickly. Just a few moments." He worked carefully, cleaning each wound, applying ointment and bandaging them so they could heal properly. With each step he kept explaining what he was doing and why. Slowly the woman relaxed. The pain was still there, but the fear of being hurt by someone she trusted began to fade. When he finished, he stepped back and gave her a small smile. "All done," he said. "You did very well." She looked down at herself, feeling the weight of her fear lifting slightly. She felt tired but grateful. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice filled with genuine relief. I don't know what I would have done without you." The rancher shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. Just rest now. You've been through a lot and your body needs time to recover." The afternoon passed quietly. The woman sat in the sunlit barn, her child playing nearby with small wooden toys. She watched the rancher work with the animals, tending to the cows, horses, and chickens. There was something soothing in his quiet efficiency, something that made her feel for the first time in a long while that life could be normal again. Eventually, curiosity overcame her fear. How do you do it?" she asked softly, gesturing to the animals in the barn. "Everything seems calm even when things go wrong." The rancher paused, leaning on the wooden fence for a moment. "Patience," he said simply. "Patience and care. If you rush, mistakes happen. If you act with respect for the animals, for people, things usually work out." She considered this quietly. There was wisdom in his words, simple but true. It was a lesson she had forgotten in the chaos of the past weeks, that care and patience could make even the hardest tasks bearable. As the sun began to set, the rancher brought them both water and a small meal. They ate quietly together, sharing no words beyond necessary exchanges. The air was filled with the sounds of the ranch, the low hum of the cows, the soft clucking of the chickens, and the distant call of a hawk returning to its nest. The child fell asleep against his mother's chest, and she leaned back, finally allowing herself a moment of peace. The rancher watched them, feeling a quiet satisfaction. Helping them had not been easy, but it had been meaningful. And he knew there was more work to do, more trust to build, more healing to nurture. But the first steps had been taken. Before leaving the barn that night, he paused to speak softly to her. "You've been very brave today," he said. "Remember, it's okay to feel scared. It's okay to need help. You're stronger than you know." She looked up at him, tears threatening to spill. I don't feel strong," she admitted. "You are," he said simply. "Strength isn't about not feeling fear. It's about moving forward anyway. You're doing that." For the first time, she truly believed him. She felt a small flicker of hope, a realization that maybe with help and patience she could heal, not just her body but her spirit as well. And that night, as she and her child slept peacefully, the rancher stayed close, watching over them, knowing that the path ahead would still be difficult, but also that it was beginning to feel possible. In the quiet of the barn, under the gentle glow of the moon, trust had begun to grow. It was fragile, but it was real, and for these 3 lives, brought together by circumstance and courage, it was the beginning of something new. A slow, steady journey towards safety, healing, and hope. The morning sun broke gently over the horizon, filling the ranch with a warm, golden light. The dew on the grass sparkled like tiny diamonds, and the birds sang their morning songs, bringing life to the quiet landscape. Inside the barn, the woman and her child stirred, waking to a world that felt safer than the one they had left behind. The rancher was already up, carrying a bucket of fresh water for the animals. He moved with calm purpose, knowing the routine of the ranch could bring a sense of stability and comfort. Today he had planned something different, a small walk outside, away from the barn and the familiar smells of hay and livestock. He believed a change of scenery, even a short one, could help both mother and child feel lighter, if only for a little while. "Are you ready?" he asked gently, looking at the woman as she adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. She nodded, though a flicker of nervousness crossed her face. I think so," she whispered. She picked up the child, holding him close, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. "Good," the rancher replied. "We'll go slow. Just a short walk for now." They stepped outside together. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh grass, earth, and wildflowers. The child's eyes widened as he looked around, pointing at a butterfly that flitted past and laughing when a rooster crowed in the distance. The woman smiled softly, a quiet joy that had been absent for too long. As they walked along the small dirt path that wound around the edge of the ranch, the woman began to speak more freely. "I didn't think I would ever find a place like this," she said, her voice soft but filled with wonder. "A place where everything feels calm, where you can breathe," the rancher nodded. "That's what the ranch is for. It's not just the animals or the land, it's the peace you can find when you slow down, when you care for something, and it cares back in its own way." She thought about his words, realizing the truth in them. Her life had been a series of running, hiding, and worrying. Here, for the first time, she felt the possibility of stability. She looked down at her child, who was happily picking up small stones along the path. A wave of relief washed over her. For the first time in weeks, she felt she could breathe without fear. After walking for a while, they found a shaded spot beneath a large oak tree. The rancher spread a small blanket on the grass and invited her to sit. The child eagerly ran to a nearby patch of clover, picking flowers and laughing. Watching him, the woman felt her heart lighten. She had feared for so long that her child would only know danger and worry, but here in this moment he was free to play, to be a child. The rancher sat beside her, carefully keeping a respectful distance but close enough to offer support if needed. "You're doing very well," he said softly. "You're stronger than you realize." She shook her head slightly. "I don't feel strong," she admitted. "I've been through so much. It's hard to see any strength in me." "Strength isn't about never being scared," he said calmly. "It's about facing what's in front of you even when you are scared. You've done that already, by coming here, by letting yourself be helped. That takes courage." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of release. She had been carrying fear and pain for so long that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to hope. And now, sitting under the oak tree, listening to someone believe in her, she felt a small spark of something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. The afternoon passed gently. The rancher showed her how to feed the chickens and collect fresh eggs, simple tasks that gave her a sense of purpose and accomplishment. The child laughed as he tried to help, stumbling and giggling, making the woman smile despite herself. For a few hours, the world outside the ranch, with all its dangers and worries, seemed far away. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, the rancher suggested they return to the barn. The woman agreed, though she lingered a moment, feeling the calm of the open land. She realized that these small moments, these simple routines, were beginning to mend more than just her body. They were mending her spirit. Back in the barn, the woman rested while the rancher prepared a small meal. He set a plate of fresh bread, cheese, and fruit on the bench beside her. The child eagerly ate, his laughter echoing softly in the quiet barn. Watching them, the rancher felt a quiet pride in their small victories, the smiles, the laughter, the trust slowly growing between them. After the meal, the rancher suggested something he rarely did with strangers, a small lesson in ranch work. He showed the woman how to groom a horse gently, explaining each step carefully. She listened intently, her hands steadying as she brushed the horse's coat. The child watched, fascinated, running his hands along the horse's mane under her guidance. "You're very patient," she said softly, looking at him. I don't know how you do it all alone." He shrugged with a faint smile. Years of practice. And caring about the animals helps. Caring about people helps too. She paused, considering his words. It's rare to find someone who cares, she said quietly, almost to herself. She looked at him, and for the first time she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone could be trusted again. The evening came, and the sky turned a deep shade of purple. The stars began to appear one by one over the quiet hills. The woman and her child prepared for the night, feeling safe in the barn that now felt like a small sanctuary. The rancher checked the animals one last time before sitting beside them. You've come a long way today, he said gently. It's okay to rest now. You've earned it. She nodded, her eyes soft and grateful. Thank you. For everything, she whispered. For being patient, for caring, for not letting me fall apart. You didn't fall apart, he said simply. You faced what came, step by step. That's strength. The woman smiled faintly, hugging her child close. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe, not just in her body, but in her heart. The rancher stayed nearby, a quiet presence in the barn, watching over them as they slept. Outside, the night was calm, the ranch alive only with gentle sounds, the soft breathing of the child, the occasional rustle of hay, and the distant hoot of an owl. It was in this calm, this quiet night, that the woman began to understand something important. Healing wasn't just about treating wounds. It was about trust, care, and the gentle patience of someone who refused to let her face life's pain alone. And for the first time, she felt the possibility of a future where fear did not control every step, where small moments of peace could exist amidst the chaos of the world. The morning light spilled softly across the ranch, casting long shadows from the trees and buildings. The air smelled of fresh grass and earth, and the soft hum of life filled the quiet fields. Today was different from the days before. There was a sense of closure in the air. Though neither the woman nor the rancher spoke of it aloud, she woke first, careful not to disturb her child who slept soundly beside her. The bruises on her arms and legs had begun to fade, and though some discomfort remained, she felt stronger than she had in weeks. For the first time, she realized that she was no longer running from fear. She had stopped. She had a place where she was safe, a man who had helped her, and a small child who could finally laugh freely. The rancher was already awake, checking the animals and making sure everything was in order. When he noticed her watching him from the barn doorway, he smiled softly. "Good morning," he said. "You slept well?" She nodded, returning the smile with a quiet warmth. "I did," she whispered. "Thank you." "For everything." "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "It's been my pleasure to help." They spent the morning together doing small chores around the ranch. The woman helped feed the chickens and gather eggs while the child ran ahead, picking flowers and laughing. The rancher watched them carefully, proud of their courage and progress. The air was filled with calm, the kind of calm that comes from safety and trust rather than fear and uncertainty. By midday, they sat together under the large oak tree, the child dozing in his mother's lap. The woman looked at the rancher, her eyes soft and grateful. "I never imagined that someone could be this kind," she said quietly. I don't even know your name." "I'm called John," the rancher said simply. "And you are?" "Clara," she replied. "And this is Daniel." She gently touched her child's forehead, smiling faintly. John nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. "Clara, you've shown a lot of courage," he said. "You came here, you allowed help, and you've started healing. That's something to be proud of." She looked down at Daniel, who stirred and opened his eyes, then back at John. For the first time, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. The ranch had given her more than safety. It had given her hope. And the man who ran it had given her trust, patience, and kindness. After a while, they returned to the barn where John helped her gather her things. Though her journey was far from over, she felt prepared to face the world outside. The ranch had taught her that she could be strong and brave, that she could trust others, and that healing, though slow, was possible. As they prepared to leave, Clara turned to John. I don't know how to repay you," she said softly, "but I will never forget what you've done for us." John shook his head. "You don't need to repay me. Just live your life, care for each other, and remember that there are people willing to help. That's all I ask." The child clung to her side, waving at John. "Bye," he said, his small voice full of innocence and happiness. Clara smiled, squeezing him gently. As they walked down the dirt road away from the ranch, the sun hung low in the sky, casting warm, golden light over the fields. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of fear and pain lifting from her shoulders. She glanced back once, seeing John standing at the barn doorway, a steady presence in a world that had been uncertain and frightening. She felt a quiet gratitude, knowing that his care had changed their lives forever. The journey ahead would not be easy, but Clara felt ready. She carried within her the lessons of patience, trust, and courage. Daniel held her hand, laughing softly as he spotted a butterfly flitting by. For the first time in a long while, she felt the world could be safe, that they could find happiness even after hardship. John returned to his chores, watching the fields stretch into the distance. He knew their paths might never cross again, but he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had done what mattered most. He had given someone safety, hope, and a chance to heal. In his heart, he knew that sometimes the simplest acts of kindness and patience could change lives forever. The sun dipped below the hills, and the ranch fell into quiet evening stillness. Clara and Daniel disappeared down the dirt road, leaving behind only footprints in the soft earth. But the memory of their presence lingered, a reminder that courage, trust, and human kindness could grow in even the most unexpected places. As night fell, John stood at the edge of the barn looking out over the fields. The stars appeared one by one, twinkling softly in the dark sky. He felt a calm contentment, knowing that in this quiet corner of the world he had made a difference. And somewhere out there, Clara and Daniel were moving forward, stronger, braver, and more hopeful than they had ever been. In the end, the whispered words that had begun their journey, "Careful. It hurts," had transformed. Pain had been met with patience, fear met with trust, and uncertainty met with care. And as the ranch settled into the peaceful night, it held within its walls the quiet power of healing, human connection, and the beginning of a new life. The story of that day, and the nights that followed, would remain in Clara's heart forever. She would never forget the rancher's steady hands, his calm voice, and the kindness that had made her feel safe once more. And for John, it was another reminder that sometimes the most important work a person can do is simply to be there, fully present, fully patient, and fully caring for someone who needs it most.